From Beijing, where today's announcement has underscored the growing closeness between two of the world's most powerful nations, China and Russia. At a routine press briefing in the Chinese capital, ministry spokesman Guo Jiakun revealed a decision that carries both practical impact for millions of travellers and profound symbolic weight for the international stage. From September 15th of this year until September 14th of next year, citizens of Russia carrying ordinary passports will be able to enter China without a visa for stays of up to 30 days. The exemption applies to tourism, business trips, family visits and cultural exchanges. It is a measure that places Russia among a small group of countries receiving such. Such policies are not made in a vacuum. They come at a time when Russia, deeply isolated from the West, has sought lifelines in Asia. China, in turn, has become a principal partner, purchasing record levels of Russian oil and gas, maintaining trade links despite sanctions, and publicly reaffirming political solidarity. With this announcement, the partnership extends to everyday people, allowing families, entrepreneurs, and tourists to bypass the traditional red tape of international travel. But beyond convenience, the announcement is intended to project an image of vitality in Sino-Russian relations. Guo Jiakun was explicit in attributing this policy shift to the personal leadership of Presidents Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Under their direction, he said, bilateral relations were not only stable, but operating at what he described as a high level. It is no coincidence that this announcement comes just as Putin is in Beijing, once again standing beside Xi in a demonstration of unity. Over the last 3 years, the two men have met more frequently than perhaps at any other time in their long careers, always emphasizing that theirs is a relationship defined by shared interests and mutual respect. From energy pipelines across Siberia to joint naval drills in the Pacific, their partnership now extends into every major sphere of statecraft. For China, opening the border to ordinary Russians achieves several goals. It positions Beijing as an indispensable ally at a time when Moscow has few left. It also boosts local economies in China's northeast, where border cities once thrived on Russian shoppers and tourists. And importantly, it sends a message to Washington and Brussels. While Western nations close doors on Russian citizens, China is throwing its doors open wider than before. The impact could be significant. Before the pandemic, Russia was among the top sources of foreign tourists to China. Millions of Russians travelled for shopping, education and cultural experiences. Analysts say the new visa policy could revive those flows and perhaps even surpass previous records, especially given the limited destinations available to Russians due to Western restrictions. Beijing's message is clear. Russians are welcome and their presence is valued. Yet the decision is not without its complexities. While Chinese officials frame this as a gesture of friendship, critics in the West will inevitably see it as another step in what they describe as a Beijing-Moscow axis. For Russia, desperate to prove that it is not cut off from the world, the optics are powerful. No visa barriers in China, no questions asked. For China, the benefits include enhanced cultural influence and the chance to bind Russian society closer to its orbit. There are practical implications too. Universities across China, already home to thousands of Russian students, may see increased enrollment. Businesses in sectors such as tourism, e-commerce and manufacturing are likely to find opportunities in expanding exchanges. Meanwhile, Russian families split between the two countries will find reunions easier. What Guo described as supporting our peoples to increase communication is more than a diplomatic phrase. It could reshape the human geography of the Sino-Russian relationship. At the same time, the move highlights Beijing's growing willingness to act outside of Western frameworks. Just as it has spearheaded initiatives like the Belt and Road, championed its own multilateral banks, and promoted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, China is now extending privileges to Russia in ways that signal independence from the global visa regimes dominated by the West. As Guo Jiakun left the podium, there was no mistaking the understated confidence with which he delivered his remarks. To many in the audience, it was another example of China's quiet but deliberate messaging that Beijing is charting its own path, aligned with Moscow and prepared to back words with tangible actions. For Russia, the announcement is a diplomatic win at a time when such wins are scarce. For China, it is a reminder of its ability to set the rules of engagement in its own backyard. So while the images from today's briefing may seem routine, a spokesman at a lectern, a carefully worded statement, the implications stretch far beyond the walls of the foreign ministry. They touch on energy politics, global alignments, and the daily lives of millions of citizens. As Beijing opens its gates to Russians, it also opens another chapter in a partnership that both countries insist is not just tactical, but strategic, comprehensive and enduring.